Just coming, I think. Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Roberts. Sit down, make yourself comfortable. Yes, Mr. Kerr.
Good afternoon. First of all, could you confirm your name?
Yes, it's Dean Roberts.
First of all, thank you very much for coming along today to give evidence. It's much appreciated.
No
in the file in front of you, the blue folder, hopefully behind the first tab, you'll find your witness statement.
Yeah, that's correct.
Dated the 5th of December 2017.
Yes.
Have you read that recently?
I have, yeah.
And do you confirm that its contents are true?
Yes.
And if you turn to the next tab, hopefully you'll find your contemporaneous note. And have you read that document also recently?
I have, yeah.
And you confirm the contents of that document are also true?
Yes.
And are you content that those documents stand as your evidence of the inquiry?
Yep.
Mr. Roberts, thank you. As I've said to other witnesses, I'm not going to take you through each and every line of your statement of contemporaneous note.
Okay.
I'm simply going to sort of draw out particular topics and events and discuss them with you.
Okay.
Now, if I don't ask a clear question, say so, and I'll rephrase it and put it more clearly and in better terms for you. Now, could we first start with some basic details? You've been a firefighter since 2010, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you're based at Paddington?
Based at Paddington.
And you're a member of the FRU crew, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You're a trained driver?
Yes.
And in particular, you're trained to drive the fire and rescue unit?
I am, yes.
Now, the first substantive topic I'd like to discuss with you is training and experience, Mr. Roberts.
Okay.
First of all, what high-rise firefighting training have you received?
We cover quite a lot of high-rise on the basic firefighter course, which was held at Southwark when I did it, and that was over 4 months, and we basically touched on various elements through theory work, and then it sort of concluded with a sort of large-scale exercise at Morton on the Marsh. So that's the training fire centre college. So we did that there. Also at Paddington, because we've got like quite a large tower, we do drills on that quite regularly, and we've got various different machines, so we can sort of chop and change as we see what we want to do.
Thank you. If we can deal with the first...
interrupt you for a second? Can I ask for him, right? Is the witness a bit too close to the microphone?
Too close? Okay.
You're a bit too close.
Okay.
Yes, you never
Okay.
quite... Is that better?
Dealing with the first element of that, the drills at Morton on Marsh, did the drills you carry out there, did they involve a partial or total evacuation?
No.
Did they consider what to do should there be a breach of compartmentation in a high-rise fire?
Just basically with firefighting on the outside is just to get a covering jet and to cover the surrounding area, but apart from that, no.
Dealing with the second drill facility you discussed, the tower at the Paddington station.
Yes.
Have the drills there involved partial or total evacuation?
No, it's basically the tower is it's a small single-storey tower of around 10 floors. It's all down to imagination. It's all sort of make-believe. There's nothing really you can do to put people up there and evacuate them as such.
In terms of lectures, have you had any particular lectures that deal with the risk posed by cladding on high-rise buildings?
No, not at all.
What training do you receive as a member of the FRU crew?
When I did it, it was a 4-week course, and that was held at Southwark. There's various core components, so you spend like a week doing heavy RTC. There's a small section that you do line training. You do stuff on ROT, so you go down on the rail, on the undertube, on the underground, and do evacuation from a tube, and sort of stuff like that, really.
Okay. Did you receive any training in relation to use and operation of extended duration breathing apparatus?
Yeah, you do a 3-day course prior to going on your FRU course.
Is it right that only FRUs carry EDBA equipment?
That is correct, yeah.
Compared to standard duration breathing apparatus, what additional equipment does the EDBA require?
The elements are pretty much the same. The only difference is the amount of time you can spend under air. I think the duration is around 40 to 45 minutes, but then that depends on obviously your working duration, how heavy you're breathing, how hard you're working, etc. And again, so what did I say, the weight, and obviously it's a 2-cylinder rather than one, so manoeuvrability is a little bit more difficult, so getting around is that little bit more intense.
Now, I don't know whether you were able to hear this morning, but we heard from Mr. Gillam, who said that even if a firefighter hadn't been trained in the use of EDBA, experience of SDBA ought to be sufficient to allow him to use it. Would you agree with that proposition?
Yeah, I sort of say, yeah, I would. The elements are exactly the same. You put the set on, the only real difference you're going to notice is the weight and the size.
What is your view of the practicability of BA wearers, whether it's extended or standard duration, carrying a supplemental mask should the need arise in search and rescue tasks?
It's all well and good carrying a second mask to use on casualties and firefighters if they become sort of entrapped or need any supply of oxygen, but that's also limiting you and the amount of oxygen you've got. Like for me, example, I use quite a lot of air when I go into jobs, so I breathe quite heavily. I get through my air a lot quicker than some of the guys, like, say, for example, Martin Gillam. So me sticking a supplementary set would be a no-no, because I'd run out of air myself and then I'd become a casualty.
That's useful. Now, the next topic I'd like to discuss with you is the night itself.
Okay.
And first of all, it's a matter of record that you were mobilised at 1:20 on the road at 1:22, and you arrived at the scene at 1:35. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, that sounds about correct, yeah.
And it's right that you were riding with crew manager Wigley and with firefighters Gillam, Gonzalez and Harris. Is that right?
Yes.
Could I ask you to turn to page 3 of your witness statement? And it's really 9 lines down from the top of the page. And it says, we progressed down the Harrow Road, our MDT failed and had gone off. How regularly does that happen?
Just from my experience, that night it happened, and there's been several occasions where sometimes this system does crash and you have to resort back to getting on the actual main scheme radio and contacting control. Oh, too close.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Too close.
You're too close.
Okay.
Yes. Can I suggest you find it easier
Move
if
it back.
you push that back, and you can afford to be
Okay.
this far from the microphone. Otherwise, you get a buzz on the
Okay.
line, and the shorthand writer can't hear you.
No problem.
Mr. Roberts, I'm sorry, I should have picked up the shorthand writer's semaphore signal, so apologies for that. When the MDT does crash, what are the usual remedial measures? Can you reboot, for example?
Yeah, there's a button behind the driver's seat that you just push and it'll reboot the whole system.
And how long does that take to take effect?
It can take anything from a minute onwards.
In your statement, you say, page 3, some 12 or 15 lines down, we had no mapping system. So we referred back to the old mapping books in the back of the FRU. By old mapping books, is that basically an A to Z?
Yeah, basically an A to Z, yeah.
Okay. The next topic I'd like to discuss with you is access on the night. And if again I could ask you to keep page 3 of your statement open. The large paragraph on that page, 4 lines up from the bottom of that paragraph, you say, these roads were really tight. The cars were all double parked and some were parked on double sole yellow lines. There was an issue getting through easily. I recall there was only one car that we needed to move out of the way, but luckily I think it had its handbrake off because one of my colleagues rolled it out of the way quite easily. How long did access problems delay your arrival at the scene?
Just a couple of minutes. It was just initially that car was just in the way. The FRU is slightly longer than the normal fire engine, so I had to sort of think about the manoeuvrability of getting that through there. And luckily for us, it seemed the handbrake was on because firefighter Gillam just sort of pushed it out of the way with firefighter Gonzalez.
Looking further down the page to the second paragraph on that page, roughly halfway down, sentence where you say, I managed to drive the FRU and park it approximately 100 metres away on the approach road to the tower. Now, Paul, could I ask you to turn up MET 000 13078? Now, if that's able to be magnified so the clarity is greater, are you able to identify on the big screen where you parked the FRU?
It was on Grenfell Road, just next to the electricity substation, so just where the path in front of that is. That's where we parked.
So looking at that plan, on the right-hand side, where the legend is electricity substation.
Yep. And then the command unit come in behind me and parked literally directly behind.
And how soon after was that parked up?
That was almost instantaneous. As we were moving the vehicle out the way, I'd seen the command unit in my side mirrors, and then he sort of followed us in down Grenfell Road and parked up.
Thank you. Could I ask you to turn over the page to page 4 of your witness statement, and the first substantive paragraph on that page, and I'll read it out. After a few minutes, I met up with the rest of the crew outside the tower. We all stayed together and we all worked together. Crew manager Wigley explained to us that the crew were tasked to take all the line gear to the top of the tower. I do not know who asked us. We were not told any more information, and we all questioned this as it was a strange task, and the information was brief, but we did as we were told and decided to assess things when we get the line gear to the roof. The line gear is similar to climbing gear. It was a strange task, as line gear and fire do not go well together unless there is a specific reason. As a crew, we questioned this task, however. We did not get an answer. To this date, I do not know the reason for taking the line gear to the roof. I think the line gear was needed at the roof, so then you'd be able to fight fire from the roof down the tower. Now, could I ask you a couple of questions arising out of that paragraph? Can you now remember the precise words that crew manager Wigley gave to you, or the gist of the words he used when describing the task you were directed to carry out?
Because I'm the driver, obviously the crew had gone slightly ahead of me because I was getting rigged. So there is potential there that I did miss a more thorough briefing. So obviously, rather than waste time and crew manager Wigley give me a full-on brief that he may have given to the crew prior to my arrival, then I may have missed something. But he basically said we've got to take the line gear up to the roof.
Did anyone ask who'd given that order?
I was one of them. I'm not too sure whether Firefighter Gillam did or Firefighter Gonzalez.
What answer did you get?
I think it was Watch Manager Dowden, and he said we've just been tasked to go to the roof. So,
at the end of the third line, it says we all questioned this as it was a strange task. Can you remember what you said in response to the order?
Just for me, I was just looking at the bigger picture of the scene and the scenario and the way the fire had developed that quickly from obviously the initial time of call to when we got there. I was concerned that the roof may have been compromised. What would happen if we got up there with the line and there was fire, because we initially were going in with no media. The access to and from the roof, generally in high-rise buildings, there's some sort of locked gate, ladders to get up there. Do we have keys? All that sort of stuff was sort of going through my mind at that time.
You say it was going through your mind. Did
Yeah.
you articulate that to crew manager Wigley?
I don't think I did, just because I think time was at the essence and it wasn't normal circumstances for us to stand about questioning. We just wanted to get on with the task and get up there and with a sort of assess once we got to the roof and make a decision when we were up there.
What did any other members of the crew say, if anything?
I couldn't tell you.
You don't remember?
I don't know.
You say in the paragraph, we decided to assess things when we get the line gear to the roof. When the crew made this decision, were you looking at the tower and were you able to evaluate the rate at which the fire was spreading?
Again, for me personally, that's one of the things I was actually looking at. Again, looking at the bigger picture. Whether the others did that, that's something you'd have to ask them. I don't know.
You went on to say it was a strange task as line gear and fire does not go well together unless there is a specific reason. It's maybe obvious, but can I ask you the obvious question? Why do line gear and fire not go well together?
Because it will burn.
Yeah. And what would be the specific reason that would justify the use of line gear where there's fire, given the risk of it burning?
I'd say basically in that scenario, if the fire had actually been contained just to the eastern side, then we could have set line up over to the western side and worked from that side with the line.
Can I ask you to turn to page 9 in your witness statement, in the second paragraph, and the first 3 lines? With the line gear, I found out after my shift that we would not have been able to take the line gear to the roof, as there was a metal gate that was locked and would have blocked our access. We did not know at the time, but we were never going to get up onto the roof. Had the crew made it to the roof, did you have the necessary kit to gain access to that roof?
From what I know now, it was a girder key that opened it was like a black 5-bar metal gate. We wouldn't have got up there. We do carry keys. Paddington each personally have their own set of keys, but there wasn't a key that we had for that particular lock that night when we went up. There is girder keys on the trucks that we could have potentially taken off, but we didn't know.
Okay. The next topic I'd like to discuss with you is the arrival at the Bridgehead. And if I could ask you to turn back in your statement to page 4 and the third paragraph on that page, I think 5 lines from the top. And it starts, when we got onto the mezzanine flooring, there were a couple of crews hanging around, and one of the watch managers from Kensington asked us whether we had been tasked. We told them that we'd been tasked to take the line gear up, and a second crew would take over. There was a bit of questioning about what we were going to do once we got there between our crew manager and the watch manager. We were asked whether we had a backup crew and emergency crew. We were asked where the next crew was and how far they were going to be. Because of the way the fire was going at that time, and we believed the next crew wasn't that far behind, we made a decision that we were going up the tower with the line gear. We were told the stairwell was quite clear, that it wasn't smoke logged, so we didn't go up using any breathing apparatus. Now, taking a step back there, first of all, who was asking the questions? Was it the watch manager or was it crew manager Wigley?
I think it was crew manager Wigley and watch manager O'Keefe.
Okay. What did Mr. O'Keefe ask? Can you remember?
I couldn't say.
Can you remember what Mr. Wigley asked?
I couldn't say again.
Can you remember whether Mr. O'Keefe discussed the use of EDBA and whether it might be used for search and rescue, for example?
Again, it's another question I can't answer.
Mr. Gillam said earlier that when they told Mr. O'Keefe what you were planning on doing, he responded, "Yeah, I don't really want you to do that, but go on." Do you have any memory of that exchange? In that paragraph, it said we were asked whether we had a backup crew and emergency crew. Who asked that question, or those questions?
I think that was Firefighter Gillam, but I'm not 100% sure.
Who answered those questions?
Again, I'm not sure. It would possibly be watch manager O'Keefe.
Again, dealing with another element of that paragraph, you said because of the way the fire was going at that time, and we believed that the next crew wasn't that far behind, we made a decision that we were going to go up the tower with the line gear. First of all, which way was the fire going at that time?
It was just on the eastern side, so it was about 3 or 4 floors from the top.
And taking a step back, between your arrival at the scene and going into the tower, can you describe how far and at what rate the fire had spread?
I didn't actually see any sort of fire spread. It sort of was around the same sort of level. But obviously I was concerned about it getting to the roof, and that was where we were going.
And when you say because of the way the fire was going at the time, was that an assessment made by the crew, Mr. O'Keefe, or both? Can you remember?
I couldn't answer.
What was the basis of the belief that the next crew wasn't far behind?
I think we heard multiple calls, or it had been made up, and FIUs were requested, so we knew they wasn't going to be that far anyway. I think Chelsea was the next closest one. I'm not too sure, but...
Now, the final bit of the quotation I put to you was, we were told the stairwell was quite clear, that it wasn't smoke logged, so we didn't go up using any breathing apparatus. Can you remember who told you that?
That was watch manager O'Keefe.
Can you remember the words used or the gist of the words he used?
No.
Now, the next topic I'd like to discuss with you is the start of your ascent up the tower. And if I could ask you to turn to page 5 of your statement and the second sentence from the top of the page, and I'll read out a few lines. We walked up to approximately the 4th floor.
All right, just wait a minute. Right. Yep, go on, Mr. King.
And there it became apparent to us that we were unable to progress any further without any breathing apparatus. There was too much smoke. Visibly, it didn't look like too much, but we were struggling to breathe and were coughing, so we left all the apparatus we were carrying on the 4th floor and went back down the stairs. First of all, on what floor after you'd left the bridgehead did you first encounter smoke?
I think it was just between floors 3 and floor 4.
Can you describe the smoke when you first encountered it?
It was pretty clear, light, wispy, white, grey smoke. Nothing too spectacular, really. It was.
And that's what you meant when you say visibly it didn't look too much?
Yeah, you could see perfectly fine.
You returned to the BH, and what did you at the bridgehead, and what did you do there?
That's where we started up and went under air and put our EDBA sets.
And if I could ask Paul to turn up the telemetry data at this point. And if we could go to box 43. Starting reading from left to right. That's your name?
Yeah, that's correct.
And if we go to the furthest green column there, 1:57, I think is your tally out time, is that right?
Yeah, that would seem about right.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. When you'd gone back to the BH, gone under air, before you went under air, did you inform Mr. O'Keefe or anyone else at the bridgehead of the conditions you encountered on the stairwell?
Obviously, the stairwell is quite a tight space, and as we came back down, we were a crew of 5, so space was limited. So I wasn't at the front where any conversations were going on, so I couldn't tell you.
Where the conversations were going on, were conversations going on?
Yeah, there was a conversation, I think, between Watch Manager O'Keefe, Crew Manager Wigley, and I think Firefighter Gillam, possibly, I'm not sure.
But you didn't hear the exchange?
No, I was right at the back.
If I can ask you to turn back to page 5, and roughly halfway down that paragraph starts with the words, when we were walking up at around floor 10 or 11, we saw a couple of crews walking down. When we saw them, we had a short discussion just clarifying that they were going down and we were going up. First of all, can you remember what the first crew said to you?
Again, I wasn't at the front of the queue, or at the front of the crew going up, so I wouldn't have spoke to them. It would have just been a sort of pass on the stairs as they were going down. No information was passed to me at all.
So I can understand the order that you're going up. Who was leading the way up the stairs? Can you remember?
I think initially it was Firefighter Gillam, Crew Manager Wigley, myself, Firefighter Gonzalez, followed by Firefighter Harris at the back.
And did you stay in that formation as you went up the tower?
No, there was various changes as we got up higher the tower, and we sort of juggled kit around.
Did you have any discussion with any member of the second crew you encountered on the way up?
I personally didn't, but whether anybody else in the crew did, I don't know.
There was some discussion this morning as to which members of the crew had the Barry sets. Can you remember who had Barry sets?
Me as the driver, I definitely didn't have one, so I think it would have been Crew Manager Wigley and possibly either Firefighter Harris or Firefighter Gonzalez.
Can you remember a member of the crew radioing the bridgehead to say that you'd met and encountered these two crews?
I don't know. It's something you'd have to ask them.
Now, in that same paragraph, you say visibility was good. At that time, were the stairwells lit? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was pretty clear, pretty light. You could see the person in front of you as you were walking up, all the way up to possibly around floor 10, I think it was.
And so, just to be clear, your recollection is that the stairwell was lit up until the floor 10
I think
level.
so.
Can you describe the smoke conditions you encountered on floor 10?
Again, it wasn't any difference to downstairs, really. Visibility was pretty good. There was a slight temperature increase, but nothing that sort of threw it out of the ordinary.
Can you remember its colour, the smoke?
No.
Could you see where the smoke was coming from?
No.
As you'd gone up the stairwell, had you noticed whether the doors of the lobbies were open or closed?
I didn't notice any doors open on any of the floors all the way up.
In his evidence, Crew Manager Wigley noted the smoke levels eased as you went up the building. Does that accord with your recollection?
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yes. Crew Manager Wigley noted in his statement that smoke levels in fact eased as you went up the tower.
Yeah, sort of as you got past, I think it was about floor 10, 11, it sort of slightly the going was pretty straightforward, quite simple. We just sort of walked up there. There was nothing that stood out and said there was a major fire going on outside.
What was in the stairwell as you went up? Were there any obstacles?
Again, lower down, I didn't notice anything. All the way up, nothing at all. It was only when we came back down, there was hose in the stairwell.
In the same paragraph, you go on to say, it was eerily quiet, and it felt like it was only us there. We didn't realise what was going on outside. We didn't have any communications, our radios were not working. We tried several times to make contact with the communications operator at the Bridgehead, but here there was no response. It felt like we were somewhat blind inside. Starting from the beginning, were your radios working when you were on the 4th floor?
Again, I didn't have a Barry set, so I wouldn't know whether the radios were working. There was traffic going over the main scheme on handheld radios, but apart from that, I don't know.
And could you hear the traffic on the handheld radios as you went up the tower to the 10th, 11th floor?
I don't remember any at all.
The next topic I'd like to discuss with you is floor 20 itself. Okay. And by the time you reached the 20th floor, can you describe the conditions you encountered in the stairwell?
Again, the stairwell was pretty clear, visibility was pretty good. There was no major change in the stairwell at all.
Looking at page 5 of your witness statement, the last paragraph on that page, and 5 lines up from the bottom, you say this. You've reached floor 20. The time was now approximately 0200, 2:15 a.m. As I put the gear down that I was carrying, I noticed an Asian-looking female standing in the corner of the stairwell between floors 20 and 21. I didn't know where she had come from or whether she was with anyone. So with firefighter Gillam, I went up to speak to her. I asked her where she had come from, who she was with, and if she had anyone else. Just for the sake of completeness, could I ask, did you or any other member of the crew radio the Bridgehead to inform them you'd found a casualty on the stairwell?
I tried on my handheld radio, and I believe they would have definitely tried on the Barry radios to try and get comms, because that is normal procedure. If we find a casualty, we'll inform them, the Bridgehead, and let them know, and then we'll start coming out with a casualty.
Were you able to get through when you radioed?
There wasn't nothing at all. There was no traffic. I couldn't hear any traffic.
The line was dead completely?
I don't know whether it was dead, but there was just nothing. We wasn't receiving anything back.
Were you hearing anything?
Nothing at all.
Mr. Gillam stayed with the woman. Did you go into the lobby of floor 20 to see whether there were any other casualties?
Yeah, so once we found the casualty, obviously she was on her own, so sort of our logic was thinking she's possibly with somebody else, a family member. She wasn't giving out any sort of information, so I decided that it was basically when you find a casualty, we do a secondary sweep, and that's basically searching within the vicinity to see if there's anybody else with her. So my secondary sweep was a little bit further, so I went up to the 21st floor.
If I can stop you there. If we look at floor 20 first of all, the secondary sweep, you're on the stairwell between the 20th and the 21st floor.
Yep.
Did you carry out a secondary sweep of the lobby of the 20th floor?
The 20th, no, I was already up between those two floors. Whether somebody at the back, firefighter Harris or Gonzalez did, I don't know. That's something you'd have to ask them.
You went up to the 21st floor. Apologies,
yes.
I interrupted you.
Yep.
And you carried out a secondary sweep on that floor, is that right? I
basically opened the door into the lobby area.
And if I could stop you there, what were the conditions on the 21st lobby?
Visibility was 0. I had my torch on. There was no light. I could literally have to put my hand in front of my face to see anything in there.
Did you go into the...
I took a couple of steps in, and then sort of as I turned around, I could see the door closing. So I was quite concerned if I did sort of get disorientated and the door did close and firefighter Gillam wasn't to come up, I could have potentially got lost on that 21st floor.
Now, what would a secondary sweep involve in this context? Would it involve knocking on the doors of each individual flat or not?
I think if visibility had been good enough, that's something I definitely would have done. But as I couldn't literally see in front of me, there's no way I could have gone in there. And like time constraints of the amount of air we used to get up there, we were sort of getting close to our turnaround point anyway.
And what did you shout, if anything, when you opened the door to the 21st lobby?
It was something along the lines of, "We firefighters, can anybody hear me?" And I was obviously, you're in a BA mash, so you've got to sort of shout as loud as possible. And again, doing that, you're taking down the contents of your cylinder. But then I started to kick the doors, like the actual entrance of the door into the stairwell, to see if anybody could hear me, but there was sort of no reaction.
And how long did it take to carry out that secondary sweep of the 21st floor?
It was really quick, probably 30 seconds, and I was sort of in, shouted, and then Martin Gillam opened the door, and I went out and just passed it on to him. And then basically what I did then was said, I'll just double check the next floor. So I went up and did exactly the same.
If I can stop you there, what was there any difference between the conditions between the 21st and the 22nd floor in the stairwell?
No, the stairwell didn't really change at all.
And as you opened the door into the 22nd floor lobby, what did you encounter?
Again, exactly the same as the 21st floor, pitch black, eerily quiet. You couldn't see in front, literally your hand in front of your face.
And what secondary sweep did you carry out on the 22nd
Again,
floor?
I did the same. I took a couple of steps and noticed the door was shut in, so I had to go back out.
And how long did you spend on the 22nd floor?
Again, it was so quick, 30 seconds if that.
Did you or any member of the crew report the conditions that you encountered on the 21st and 22nd floor back to the Bridgehead at that point?
I'm not too sure, because as myself, I came out with the casualty, so I sort of went straight out onto the mezzanine flooring. So whether any of the other crew passed that information on, I couldn't tell you.
Do you recall whether communications were restored at any point on your descent down the tower?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, it was sort of, you were so involved with bringing the casualty down, how much air you had, you were just trying to get out basically, and as you got lower and lower, the conditions were getting worse and worse. It was getting hotter and darker from around floor 10, 11, and then
if I could stop you before
Okay.
you go any further.
Yeah.
Before you started the descent itself, can you remember how much air you had left, or how many minutes you gauged you had left under air?
We've probably used up half the duration. Carrying that amount of kit up was quite a physical task, so we wasn't sure of the conditions, especially as we were going up. It was quite warm. We didn't know if anything was going to deteriorate, so you sort of got to factor in getting out as well as obviously getting in and sort of making that judgment. So we sort of wanted to save a little bit of extra air to make sure we got out okay.
Now, on pages 6 and 7 of your statement, you describe the descent down the tower with the woman you'd rescued. On the second paragraph of page 6, roughly halfway down, you say, when we got to approximately floor 11 or 10, conditions all of a sudden became really hot. It was so hot my legs were getting extremely hot. As we were walking, I noticed that the female was starting to darken as well. This is when the smoke comes into contact with the skin, causing it to become darker in colour. The female appeared to be choking a lot more. She was sick and then became unconscious. I shouted out to the rest of the crew, this changed the female, so we began to move faster. Now, if I can take each element of that stage by stage, I interrupted you earlier on. You were describing smoke conditions as you came down the tower. Can you describe, first of all, coming down from the 20th to the 15th floor, what the smoke conditions were like on those 5 floors?
It was pretty clear. There wasn't really much of a change. Visibility was good down them floors. You could see your crew in front of you. I was carrying the casualty at the head end, so I had her arms. Firefighter Gillam had the legs, and I could see Firefighter Gillam and whoever was in front of him quite clearly.
And what was the position between the 15th and 10th floors in terms of
Again,
smoke?
exactly the same.
And were you able to identify a cause for this sudden increase in heat that you encountered around floor 10 or 11?
No.
You're aware of metabolic heat stress.
Yes.
Did you think you were suffering from it? You were experiencing the symptoms as you came down?
I was hot, but there was nothing there that really suggested that I was suffering from any stress at all, no.
When you reached the bottom of the tower, understandably you were preoccupied with ensuring the lady received medical treatment. Did you have the opportunity to return to entry control to brief them on what you'd encountered?
I didn't personally, because as we obviously came out with the casualty, we were expecting sort of a handover to LAS, but they wasn't there, so myself and Firefighter Gillam took her down out of the tower to the awaiting LAS. Whether anybody out of the crew did that, I don't know.
Were you able to see any information when you were back in the towers to what you'd encountered on the 20th, 21st and 22nd floors on the walls or anything like that?
Is this in relation to later on?
No, just that when you were...
Not that I noticed. Everything was so quick bringing her out. We just got outside so quickly, I don't remember sort of seeing anything at all.
Could I now turn to the topic of the woman from flat 183? And could I ask you to turn to page 7 of your statement and the bottom of page 7, the final 2 lines. And you said, as we were doing this, I assisted casualties. I assisted the removal of a conscious lady who told me she was from flat 183 on the 15th floor. She told me that her 12-year-old daughter, her 2 dogs, a male and a pregnant friend were still in the flat. To whom did you pass the information that the woman had given you regarding her daughter and the others?
I initially went over to the outside of the tower where there was a Paladine bins were set up with all the FSGs going on the floor. I don't know who I passed the information on, but I passed it on there, and I think they told me to then go and tell the Bridgehead, and I also went back into the tower and to tell the Bridgehead that information straight after that. And
when you say tell the Bridgehead, can you remember who you told at the Bridgehead?
I think it might have been Glenn Williams, but I'm not 100% sure.
Might I ask Paul to bring up the photograph that was at Met 15816? Does this, do these writings seem familiar to you? Have you seen them before?
Yeah, that's as you go into the front of the tower. It was on the wall on the left-hand side.
And if you see at the top right-hand
corner,
corner...
the 183. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you see anyone write that?
I didn't see anyone write that at all, no. I just seen that later on when I had my second wear in the early hours of the morning, but I don't know who wrote that. No.
When you came to give the information to Glenn Williams, can you explain the precise information you communicated to him?
It was sort of very brief, very quick. Basically what the lady had said to me, flat 183, a 12-year-old daughter, 2 dogs, 15th floor, and a male and a friend. And
do you know how he recorded that information?
I have no idea, no.
Are you able to provide any further detail about the steps taken to rescue that lady's daughter?
No.
Now, the penultimate topic I'd like to discuss with you is your second entry back into the tower. And as I understand, your evidence says that the EDBA crews, including yourself, were dispatched back into the tower. I'd be grateful if Paul could turn up the telemetry sheet, LFB quadruple 03115 and box 188. Now, again, reading from left to right, there's your name. And then we have tally out at 5 minutes past 5. Does that sound right to you?
No. Basically, once we came out and did our first wear, our sets, we A-tested them on the fire ground, and our sets were taken away by other oncoming FRU crews who obviously used them. I didn't actually use my own set. I used a set later on from PEG.
And what task were you given on your return to the tower?
It was go up to floor 10 and 11 and to fight the fire.
Is it right that you found a deceased female on the stairwell between the 10th and the 11th floor?
Yeah, that's correct.
And had the body been there on your earlier descent down the tower?
No, I didn't see any bodies on the way down.
on your return to the tower, are you able to give us a time when you reached the 10th floor and saw the body?
I couldn't tell you at all, mate.
The final topic I'd like to discuss with you is the question of the Surrey turntable. And if I could ask you to turn to page 9 of your witness statement, and the top paragraph there, 5 lines down, I recall seeing a larger turntable ladder attending Grenfell Tower from Surrey Fire Service. We do not have a turntable ladder this large in London. The one from Surrey may have been able to get close to the top of the tower. As far as you are aware, is the Surrey turntable the nearest one to London?
Again, that's a question I can't answer.
Okay. Do you know whether London has a turntable the size of the Surrey one?
No.
Mr. Roberts, thank you very much. Those are the questions that I have for you. Others may have more. Sir, might I ask you to rise for 10 minutes?
Yes.
And I can collate any questions that may arise.
Right. Well, Mr. Roberts, it may be that there are some more questions,
Okay.
or it may be there won't.
Yep.
And we're going to have a break now for 10 minutes, and then if you'd like to come back at 10 to 3,
Yep.
we'll see if there are any more questions.
Okay, thank you.
All right? And please don't talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out. Thank you very much. Right, 10 to 3 then, please.
So thank you.
Yes, all right.
Yeah, fine.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Roberts, just a few additional questions. Thank you for your patience. First of all, just going back to your time on the 22nd floor, you opened the door between the stairwell and the lobby. As you opened that door, what did you shout, if anything?
Again, it wasn't until I went inside I shouted at all. As I opened the door, I didn't shout anything. Only once I went inside did I shout.
Okay. Next, can I ask you about the locked gate at the roof? Have you been on any 72D visits of high-rise buildings on your patch?
On Paddington's ground? Yes.
Yeah. Have you encountered a situation in which the access to the roof is governed by locked gates or similar protection?
Yeah, there generally seems to be some sort of gated access. Obviously, that will stop any members of the public getting up onto the roof. There is generally some sort of lock or controlled access.
Is that a point you've noted and highlighted on 72D visits on your patch?
Yeah, it's just something you pick up as you go around.
Is it the type of information that you'd find on the MDT?
Again, I don't use the MDT for looking up that sort of information. So that would be down to a crew manager or watch manager who's sat in that seat controlling the MDT.
And what training do you receive to respond to the type of smoking conditions you experienced at Grenfell Tower on the 14th of June?
It's just basically something that you cover in your basic fire training at Southwark.
Mr. Roberts, those are all the questions I have for you. Thank you very much for your time today and your patience.
Now, you can help me with one thing, if you would, Mr. Kinnear, before Mr. Roberts goes. Could we just look at his statement, page 7?
Sir.
Last line. You asked him about this. This is refers to flat 183 on the 15th floor. Is that correct?
So, yeah, well, I think that was the evidence.
Or has there been a transposition?
Well, I think that's the evidence of Mr. Gillam and Mr. Roberts. Are you sure it's flat 183?
Yeah, it was definitely 183. She was screaming 183 to me several times. I did ask her to clarify again what she said, and she was saying 183.
Okay. I wasn't sure that was on the 15th floor, that's all.
I think that might be a fair observation, but I think the evidence we've had from Mr. Gillam and Mr. Roberts is it was flat 183.
Right. All right. Well, that's as you recall it, is it, Mr. Roberts?
Yeah, that's definitely what she said, flat 183, and she said 15.
All right. Well, there it is. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.
Well, no more questions for you, so thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. You've come a long way, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, North Wales.
Well, thank you very much
Thanks
for taking the trouble to
That's
come
fine.
so far.
Thank you.
Right, if you'd like to give the usher, that's fine. Thank you. Well, Mr. Kinnear, we've done rather well for today.
We have
haven't
done. Sir, I have an application to make on behalf of Mr. Millett. Tomorrow we have two witnesses, Mr. Paul Watson and Mr. Gareth Cook.
Yes.
And Mr. Millett's application is an invitation to ask you to start at 9:30, simply because both witnesses cover a broad range of detailed issues, and he'd be grateful for the additional half hour in which to cover those in order to keep within the timetable.
And I see he's sent you in to make the application.
He has.
Well, I think given the fact that there are two quite substantial witnesses, I think it would be right to start at 9:30 tomorrow.
I'm grateful,
Right.
sir. And so that concludes today's business.
All right, thank you very much. Well, I'm afraid it's another early start tomorrow, but we'll get an early afternoon this afternoon. So 9:30 tomorrow, please. Thank you very much.